This is my second time recording this video because when I went to go edit the first time around, for one, I just didn't like how I did it. For two, it felt like I was tilted. And I still feel like I'm tilted. But I can't tell whether it's the camera that's tilted or this bookshelf. Hi, my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. Today I am doing a March 2024 wrap-up. I am very behind, but also I haven't been doing videos lately at all. In fact, the last video I posted was one that I had originally uploaded to TikTok. But life has kind of slowed down for me a little bit, so I'm going to get into talking about the books I read. I will do a small life update at the end, that way anyone who's interested can stick around and anyone who just wants to hear the books can vamos. I read 5 books in the month of March, and I always think for me that's a tiny number, but really that's my average. But also in January of every year, I always manage to read a lot of books, so I always think that I can keep up that pace, and I can't. At any rate, getting into the books I read. The first book I read was The Arsonist City by Hala Al-Yan. This book follows the Nassar family as they travel back to Beirut because the father of that family has decided to sell his ancestral home. His wife is none too pleased about this, and the kids all have varying reactions, but for the most part, it's a no. This book is very much a family study and follows each character through their different trials and tribulations, and then also their interconnecting trials and tribulations. It does go from present to past scenes, so the past is the mother and father, how they met, how they became involved, and all their baggage. And the present is all the kids' baggage. The very first scene of this book is an explicit intimate scene between a husband and wife, but it's also a look at how unintimate their intimate moment is. That first scene is off to the races, but it does kind of taper out as far as pacing goes, and I would say the first third after that scene is a little bit on the slower side. Once you get past, I think, halfway mark, you get into a lot more juicier tidbits of story. Overall, I enjoy this book. I do love family studies and character studies, so I think this book fits into that. The next book I read is For Your Love by Beverly Jenkins. This book is the 6th in the Blessing series. The Blessing series follows a small town called Henry Adams and its residents after it gets bought by a lady named Bernadine Brown, who wins a lot of moolah from a divorce settlement. Bernadine ends up running a type of experiment where she brings in foster kids to place with different families so that the whole town can come together to raise these kids. Each book focuses on a different character, though there are recurring themes and plot lines throughout the books. However, one of my biggest problems with these books, especially past like the second book, is that some of the plot lines get resolved a little bit too quickly. So each book has a main storyline, and sometimes it gets resolved a little bit too fast and a little bit too cleanly. And I feel like some of them could span multiple books, and they probably should. But overall, this is really just fun small town chisme. Like if you like sipping tea, getting the gossip, getting the goods. There's also some really crazy parts that are just entertaining. And I have fun with these books, so I like them. Overall, I just kind of wish there was a little bit more meatiness in some of the plot points. The next book I read is Ana Maria and the Fox by Liana de la Rosa, and this is an interracial historical romance that follows Ana Maria and her sisters as they go to London to escape the war that's happening in Mexico around that time. It's the war between Mexico and France in like the late 1800s. Ana Maria's father sends them to London to stay with their uncle, where he thinks that they will be safe. The uncle has different plans in mind. He sends the girls out to be wellness ambassadors for Mexico to try and garner sympathy for their cause. So they go to a lot of balls and try to charm the people. During this time, Ana Maria runs into Gideon, who is a member of parliament at this time, and he is trying to get his own kind of laws and policies in place. Sparks fly, looks are lingered, dances are to be had. Historical romances will always have me in a chokehold, but I particularly appreciate when they have geopolitical plot points because sometimes historical romances ignore everything else that was happening in the world. This certainly does not. The next book I read is Dragged to the Wedding by Andrew Gray, and this I had done a review of. It's a video prior. James is a police officer, and he has to go back to his hometown in order to go to his sister's wedding. He decides to hire the services of a drag queen to pretend to be his date, so that way his mother, who does not know he is gay, continues not knowing he's gay. Daniel is the person that he hires, and Daniel's stage name is Lala, but Daniel does not go as Lala, Daniel goes as Daniela. And Daniela manages to charm everyone and saves the day multiple times. That might be a spoiler, but it probably shouldn't be at this point, because if you have ever read a rom-com or watched a rom-com, that's how it goes. I picked this book up because it's a gay romance written by a gay man, and I feel like a lot of gay romances are not necessarily written by gay men, you know? I did enjoy the romance aspect because I do feel like the two characters fell in love with each other for their personalities, but there were some plot points that I kind of thought was like, eh. And the way that James is portrayed in his role as a police officer is kind of weird to me because, like, they keep mentioning, like, he keeps his cool because he was in a lot of firefights. And I just... Was he though? Was he in a lot of them? Because the town that he's from or the police department that he's in actually has very low crime ratings, particularly in violent crimes, and so I just don't think that he's in that many. And then there's parts where it's like the Chicago PD asks him to be part of their SWAT every now and then, and I just don't think that's very realistic, but what do I know? And it's a rom-com. Why am I focused on that? I don't know. The last book I read is Santa Fe Morning by Amanda Allen, and this is a historical mystery book that's set in the 1920s and is featured in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Yes, I am one of those lame people who, anytime New Mexico is mentioned, I'm like, I'm from there. We follow Madeline, who's an artist in Santa Fe. She's originally from the East Coast and from a very affluent family, but she runs away to Santa Fe after her husband dies in order to have her freedom and to paint and try to make her living doing so. When she comes back to Santa Fe after visiting her family, while she's having a good old time with some of her friends at a hotel, someone passes away. A person who she's close to ends up getting pinned for the murder, but she wants to try and prove that it's not that person. So that's how she gets involved. Overall, this is a fun read. I think the biggest problem I had with this is that in the beginning, there's kind of like this overdoneness in showing that Madeline is a very open and caring, compassionate person to everyone of every like race, ethnicity, and sexuality. I just felt it was layered on a little bit too thickly, like, yes, I get it. I feel like it could have been shown and not said as much, but that's a very small complaint and really just an argument of showing versus telling, which either is fine. It really is. I do enjoy that this book takes place in the 20s and that we get a setting that's not on the East Coast, that we get some of the Western kind of aspects in this book as well. Though also I should note that it did bother me that this author used a Z for biscochitos instead of an S. But in the second book, which I also read, she does use an S. So reparations, I suppose. So those are the 5 books that I read. So now for a bit of a life update. During the time when I wasn't making videos, I was finishing up some of my key aspects of schooling. I graduated this past year in December. After I got my degree, I ended up applying for my certification in New Mexico for being a therapist. So I am now a board certified mental health therapist. And I got a job, so I started working. Now that I am settled into my job and my schedule has kind of evened itself out from the chaos that was schooling and work, I can now do some of the things that I have loved in the past. For example, making YouTube videos about books. I will say, as far as this channel goes, my hope is to focus on long form reviews, recommendation lists, and of course, participating in any readathons that may be happening. Thank you so much for watching, and as always and forever, may you get lost in a book.